Hello everyone, welcome back to Module 8 of the 7th to 8th grade video series. Today we're going to be learning about phrases and clauses which make up the structure of every sentence. So before we begin, make sure to follow along with our 7th to 8th grade video series worksheet, which is linked on our website, and there are follow along notes for that as well as practice prompts. So first thing we're going to talk about is what is a phrase. So a phrase is a group of words staying together as a conceptual unit, typically forming a component of a clause. So while there are many different types of phrases like prepositional, adverbial, etc., what's important is that phrases do not have a subject-verb component. So phrases can add detail, description, or meaning to a sentence, but they cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. So for example, after school, with friends, a new black shirt, had been studying, each of these has a meaning, right? But none of them can tell a full story on its own. So to identify a phrase, make sure you ask yourself, does this group of words have a subject and a verb? And if the answer is no, then it's a phrase. Now let's talk about what a clause is. So a clause is a group of words that does have a subject and a verb. So for example, she runs, they were laughing, the dog barked. Each of these has a subject and a verb, right? She, and then runs, I, love, and then they were laughing. So the interesting thing about clauses is that not all clauses can stand alone. There are two main types of clauses, which is independent clauses and dependent clauses. So an independent clause is a clause that expresses a complete thought and can stand alone in a sentence. So for example, I finished my homework. That works perfectly on its own, right? It's understandable, it conveys a simple idea. A dependent clause is something that has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand alone. So for example, because I finished my homework. It feels very unfinished, right? Like, what were we talking about before that? Why? It's not complete. And it feels like you're waiting for more information. So dependent clauses usually start with words like because, although, when, while, if, since, and they depend on an independent clause to make sense. So now that you guys know about independent clauses and dependent clauses, we have to be careful of run-on sentences. So a run-on sentence happens when two independent clauses are joined incorrectly. So for example, I like writing, I do every day. Both parts have a subject and a verb, right? I and like, and do, I and do. And both of them can be sentences on their own. But then they're pushed together and there's really nothing in between to separate them, right? You have to say it in one breath almost, like, I like writing, I do every day. And there's nothing to separate them, so it's a run-on. And kind of like the phrase, it runs onto each other. So how can we fix run-ons or avoid them? There are really three main correct ways to join independent clauses or fix a run-on. The first option is to use a period. So you could say, turn them into two sentences and say, I like writing, I do every day. That's simple, right? It's clean, it always works. Your second option is to use a coordinating conjunction. So coordinating conjunctions join two separate ideas. So a coordinating conjunction is fanboys, which stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So for our previous example, you could say, I like writing and I do every day. That joins them together and it kind of gives them a relationship that you wouldn't have if you had a period. And the comma alone is not enough, by the way, you need to have the conjunction as well. So your third option is using a semicolon. So semicolon is basically a fancy period, but it connects two closely related independent clauses. For example, I like writing, I do every day. This one is more advanced, but it's still totally correct. Now let's play the hottest new game in town, phrase or clause. So our first example is in the middle of the night, and I want you guys to pause this video and ask yourself, is this a phrase or a clause? Okay, so this one is a phrase, and the reason for that is because there's no subject and no verb, right? You don't know what's going on. It's kind of like setting the scene. Our second example is the cat on the roof. So pause the video. Okay, this one is a phrase. It has a noun, right, which is cat, but there's no verb. The cat isn't doing anything, so that's why it's a phrase. And our third example is she opened the door, and pause if you think it's a clause or phrase. This one is a clause because the subject is she and the verb is open, so there's a subject verb, it's a clause. And our fourth example is a little tricky. It's because he was late. So pause if you think that's a phrase or clause. So this one is a clause, but it's a dependent clause. It has a subject, right, he, and it has a verb, which is was, but it can't stand alone because it feels like we're missing something. So now it's your turn. Practice makes perfect. There are a lot of practice prompts available on our website provided on the worksheet, so you can visit wordupwriters.org to access those. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next video series.